Educate, entertain, enjoy.
You're listening to Aspen Waite Radio.
I was very happy today because he is talking to a great man that is Johno Bushman Harris. I suppose before we trawl through, that's Johno being born, by the way. Well, that my impersonation of Johno being born. In fact, he probably was so laid back. He probably went, "Hey, man, it's good to be out, man. Thanks, Mum, for looking after me. It's good to be out." There, I can see a cartoon strip coming on. So, how many years have I known you now, Mr. Harris?
It must be about 7 or 8, I would say.
As long
Probably
as that.
closer to 8, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite funny, actually. When I first met Mr. Harris, he was technically a government employee. Is that right?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, I was working for Oxford Innovation, but it was on a government project.
So you're a manager for the Business Growth Service, which is quite funny, considering the government doesn't understand business, but there we are. It was obviously a good wheeze because you were quite an influential guy. You got to meet hundreds of people, and loads of businesses got loads of grants to do nothing, and it was quite a good system and kept lots of people in jobs, didn't it?
Yeah, and it actually played its role in bringing us out of that last recession, definitely.
Yeah, so I was introduced to you by the great sparrow curry eater that is Samantha Clyde, I think.
Yes.
And it's quite funny, actually. My formative views of Mr. Bushman are very different to who Bushman is. So but for those of you, it's interesting. I mean, you could draw a parallel with me. So on the face of it, you see this sort of very laid back, cool, larger than life, loving life person that is Johno. But actually underneath that, under that Emperor Ming face, there actually is a very serious, focused person. And so Johno used to send me very interesting emails about the ethical reason as to why he could or couldn't do something. And I used to think he was a bit of a job's worth, to be honest. A bit bureaucratic, shall we say. And of course, you're not like that at all, are you? So we'll racing ahead of ourselves. So you were born in Zimbabwe a few years ago?
Yeah, well, I was born in Malawi, actually. Yeah, even further into Africa.
Got that right. What were you doing in Malawi? Well, that doesn't seem to be in Zimbabwe. So what happened there?
Yeah, my old man, my parents were there. My dad's a quantity surveyor, so he had a practice in Malawi, and I happened to be born.
That probably
I've got great memories, actually. I can remember, because I left Malawi very young, but I remember we had loads of monkeys in the trees behind the house, and I used to spend hours just looking up at them.
Yeah, I'm used to that, working in Lion's House. Yeah, so was Malawi, I don't know an awful lot about Malawi, so was it a British, ex-British protectorate colony?
Yeah, so it went, Zimbabwe used to be called Rhodesia, Zambia was Northern Rhodesia, and Malawi was Nyasaland.
Oh, I prefer Nyasaland, it's a good name.
Yeah, it was very, very cool name. Very nice, beautiful people, beautiful country.
Beautiful people. Sounds like Al Murray, that.
Yeah.
Beautiful British name, Ross Curry. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful name. Beautiful English name, Ross Curry. Yeah. Sorry. I'm obsessed with Al Murray. He's just so brilliant. So when did you move? So your father then moved to Zimbabwe, I take it?
That's it, yeah. So he then went and set up a practice in what was then Rhodesia. In 1970, I think. So I would have been about 5.
Was that in Harare or?
Yeah, that was Salisbury, and I went. The house we ended up living in was right next door to the school I went to, so that was pretty cool. I used to walk to school and back every day. Living in that sort of environment was very different as well, because the average family, every house had a swimming pool. When I say the average, I'm talking the average white European family. 3 or 4 servants. It was like living in paradise, really.
Well, unless you were the servant, of course.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it depends which side you wanted of the racial divide you were on, I suppose.
It's interesting, actually. The closest I can come to that is when I used to go to Thailand in my capacity as chairman of Vehicle Systems Logistics. My great chum, Dean Robinson, who I think you've met, actually, Johno.
I think I might have, yeah.
Yeah. Dean Robinson, maybe even better at fall down drinking than you. Yeah, Dean used to have this wonderful house. So in Bangkok, all the white Europeans, as you'd call it, probably lived in sort of compounds.
Right.
There's sort of these gated communities with these wonderful houses, with lakes and things in there. And I always remember Dean had effectively a Burmese servant.
Right.
And the thing that, as someone who's interested in people, they didn't seem to see this. Whenever I looked at this Burmese lady, all I could see was pain, sorrow in her eyes. She's a very, very sad lady. And it was made quite an effect on me. Obviously.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah. So, were there many? Were there Germans there and Americans and
no, not really. Actually, funnily enough, in those days, everybody was. They were all Rhodesians, basically. And they came from a good 2 or 3 generations back from across the wide diaspora, but predominantly British heritage. Yeah, and they all spoke like me. The same accent.
Yeah. So I presume your school was all white, was it?
Well, funnily enough, our school was not. I went to the one school where we had an integrated black and white mix of students. There were more white students, but it was run by the Jesuits, a Catholic school. I'm not Catholic, but my mother decided to send me to this Catholic school, probably because it was next door. And and so we to this very day, our group of my old schoolmates, we're very close. We've got a WhatsApp group. There's about 60 of us on it. We're always chatting, chirping away on there. So it was quite different. We were quite different, actually. When we used to go and play sports against the other all-white schools, there was always chirps, from them, racial chirps about the fact that we had black people in our team and all that sort of stuff. But then we would just beat them.
Were there any Afrikaans people in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, lots of Afrikaans people.
So can you speak any Afrikaans?
Money in the kroeg spoeg nie.
It's supposed to be the easiest language in the world for an English person to learn. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah, it doesn't have things like feminine and male differentiations of Afrikaans. It's a very simple language without things like past perfect and future imperfect, all that rubbish,
Yeah. It's money in the kroeg spoeg nie is the only Afrikaans I can speak, actually, and it means don't spit in the bar.
Oh. So how would you sum up, not that you've grown up in England, but what do you think were the main differences between growing up in Zimbabwe and growing up in England? What would be the main
and growing up in the UK? It would definitely be the speed of life, much, much, much slower there. And because of that, I would say people that come from growing up in that part of the world are much more in touch with nature, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because we spend a lot of time in nature. Out there, you're on your weekends. You're either you're in the game parks, in the bush, or you're out swimming in somewhere. You'll be swimming. The sun's always shining, so you're always out. Yeah.
So I presume that you so probably in those days you probably played cricket and rugby the most, did you?
Yeah, I couldn't stand cricket, so I did play rugby, a lot of rugby. Yeah.
Was your school any good?
Oh, we were quite good, yeah. I ended up playing for thirds, so that tells you how rubbish I was. But the school was really good. We did all right.
I presume you're playing on hard pitches all the time.
Unless you played for first team. If you played on first team, they had the pitch at the very front of the school, which was watered every week. Okay. If you played for thirds like me, you were right down the back playing on the stuff that never got any water.
So there you are, people. There's a lesson in life. Better not to be a loser, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Am I allowed to say that? No, because of course no one's allowed to win anymore. When I came joint 7th in the sack race the other day, sorry, that's just Paul's satire, that is. Yeah, no one finds me amusing, but there we are. So what were the favourite subjects of young Harris at school?
Geography. I love geography.
I'll test you on that.
Yeah, it was the thing. The reason I like geography is there was hardly any of us doing geography for some reason, and we had all these field trips to go and look at potholing and canyoning and stuff like that, and it was it was pretty cool. That I liked English, and biology actually, strangely enough.
Well, yes, I can imagine you liking biology in later life, of course, but
yeah.
No, ha 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 ha. Paul's bad joke on a Monday morning. So, did you stay at the same school, or I don't know, did you go to university there? Or?
So my schooling, the first school, the one that was next door to the house we bought when I was little, that one was run by the nuns, Catholic nuns, and then you went up to the sort of middle school, which was run by teachers, I suppose, with a priest, and then you went to the senior school, St. George's College, which was the oldest school in Africa, I believe. 1895, it was founded, and it was built like a castle. It's phenomenal. So next year, I'm going to go back to Zimbabwe for a few months, or to Africa, to show my kids. And one of the sort of things on the agenda is to go and show them the school, and we're going to have a school reunion with the old class.
So when did opposition to, I suppose you'd call it white rule, really start to gather momentum? What sort of year was that?
It was about 1968, 69, I reckon.
So when you were at school, there was a lot of unrest, was there? Yeah. So if we wanted to go, yes, and the unrest throughout that whole 70s got pretty hectic. If you wanted to go on holiday, the only place you could really go on holiday to outside of Zimbabwe or Rhodesia then was South Africa, because all the other surrounding countries were hostile. So when we went on holiday, we had to go in convoys. We'd have a Land Rover with a machine gun mounted on the back of it at the front, and then you'd have a few cars, some of them pulling caravans and things, and then halfway along you'd have another Land Rover, and then at the back you'd have a Land Rover. And of course my parents always insisted on going on holiday with the old caravan. So I do remember once we got a puncture in the caravan, and we had to stay back with the guy at the back of the thing while me and the old man fixed the puncture, and off we went again. And I remember being pretty scared, thinking, we're all on our own here. We could easily be ambushed, but nothing happened. Luckily. Yes, of course. Zimbabwe used to be called the breadbasket of Africa.
Yes, and it was for many years, even after Mugabe took over. Up until the 1990s, the commercial farmers were phenomenal in the yields they were producing and the way that they farmed.
Yeah, without getting too political, I think Zimbabwe would probably be the quintessential sort of country where, on the face of it, if you looked at it very much, with the sort of the view that woke people have today, you could easily go back and look at 60s Zimbabwe and say, it was a land of privilege, and white, it was all right if you were white, but not if you were black. But then if you actually look at the reality of it, you had a country that was renowned for its agriculture and its output of crops, etc. And was respected on the international stage. And now, of course, this is a country massively in debt, with millions of people in poverty. maybe, yeah, so it's interesting. I always think it's interesting. So communist Russia would be a good example. So on the face of it, you've got this sort of, Tsarist Russia with all the money at the top of the system. It gets displaced by so-called ideological communists who actually create an even more corrupt system than the royalists did. And that's sort of what Mugabe did, didn't it? I mean, Mugabe's misuse of power would be greater than any white man would ever be capable of.
I think it's just a very unfortunate situation of a country that had everything. And for 20 years, from 1980, when he took over, to till about 2000, or certainly till 1998, it was a phenomenal place to live. Things were going well. There was a lot of corruption. But then what happened was he decided he wanted to become life president. And somebody woke up in Zimbabwe and said, hey guys, do you know that he's changing the constitution? And for some reason, it went to a vote, and no matter how much he rigged it, the vote was overwhelmingly against him changing the constitution to become life president. And that's when he flipped, and he just imploded the country within about 5 years, just like that. From about 1997 up until about 2005, that was it, from a really great country to a basket case.
Yeah, I mean, he probably would be right up there with, for different reasons, maybe, with sort of Stalin and Hitler and
absolutely,
as some of the worst people in history, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're very serious here. So, music's obviously very important to you, Johno. Did you listen to the same sort of music as a British kid when you were growing up, or was there any African influence, do you think?
There was a bit of African influence, I would say. You always used to hear on a Sunday afternoon or anything like that, you would hear people in the fields singing gospel music. It was quite different. We did listen to much the same music, but nowhere near the intensity of kids growing up here. I think British people are far more musically influenced than we were out in Africa.
Okay, so your first selection today is "Burning Down the House" by Talking Heads. Why did you choose this?
Well, this song, I just picture this song when I was a teenager with my mates. We'd got our licenses. We had a car. Somebody had a car, and they would have a music system in it. And we would always, every weekend, we'd be going out to the farms. Us townies going out to the farms to visit mates on farms or mates in farming areas where there was bound to be a disco or something. And this is the sort of music we listened to in the car on the way out there.
Okay, so
getting vipped up.
Paul Waite.
"Burning Down the House" by the very cool Talking Heads, the first selection of the very cool Johno Bushman Harris. And of course, that song went on to be a big hit for Tom Jones, Johno.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Was it the other way around?
No. I think definitely a Talking Heads song, I would have said, with some certainty. Anyway, so we left you out to party in the farms in Zimbabwe. So did you go to university there?
Yeah. I don't know how I ended up getting to university, but my mother was very, very insistent that she wanted me to get a degree. After I left school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to do anything intellectual, so I took a year out. And being unsure of what I wanted to do, I thought I'll go and work for the old man, who was a quantity surveyor. So I did about 6 months for him, and I didn't particularly enjoy the quantity surveying aspect of it, but I thought I can put up with it. And then I thought, my mother, who really wanted me to go to uni and get a degree, said, if you get a degree, you can take over your old man's business, but you need to be qualified if you want to take it over. So I thought, well, it makes logical sense. I'll go to university and I'll get my quantity surveyor degree and run the old man's business. So that's what I did. I went to South Africa and studied quantity surveying and thoroughly enjoyed the social aspect of it. Took longer than the average student to actually get the degree, and then came back and worked as a quantity surveyor for 5 years for the old man, to realize I really, really, really did not want to be a quantity surveyor. No matter how lucrative his business was, I didn't want it.
I quite. So, where did you go to somewhere like Cape Town, or did you? Or?
Yeah, Durban. I went to Durban.
Durban.
Yeah, had a lot of fun in Durban for a good 5 years.
So presumably your community was sort of more British, rather than Afrikaans.
very, so quite very British, South African British.
Yeah.
At the time that I was at university, was the whole, Nelson Mandela was coming out of prison, just about 2 miles from where the university was. There was a place called Umbilo, and they used to, in Umbilo, there was dormitories of Zulu workers and dormitories of Xhosa workers, and these guys would attack each other, these dormitories. So Umbilo became known as the highest place to get murdered, basically, in the world. It was the highest. I think it was called. There was like a certain half a square kilometer of these dormitories. It's just these guys were attacking each other all the time. It was phenomenal, really. When I say attacking, with axes and hangers and things.
Were you conscious of living in a very divided community?
Yes, yeah, very conscious. There was a lot of protests at the uni. It was a happening, politically very active and happening place.
And would you say that the British South Africans and the Afrikaans Africans were united or divided at that time?
I don't know. That's a very, very difficult question. I would say the country was totally divided. It really was. From the university perspective, all the students were there was very left-wing. We need to get independence. Mandela needs to come out of jail, all that sort of stuff. And then there was a very right-wing, very much smaller section of right-wing students who, I don't know where they got their funding from or anything, but they were very, very much along. This is the way it's got to be. It's got to remain the way it is, and that's the way it has to be. So it was, it was a very happy, and it was quite interesting being from Zimbabwe as well, because it wasn't my country. We had already been through all of this. We had our independence.
So what were you, about 27 when you decided not to be a quantity surveyor? Would that be about right?
Yeah, that's about right. And then I discovered this thing called Success Motivation. It was like a self-improvement program that came from America. A bit like coaching today, but you would do a module of this 12 module program. You'd do a module in a week, and then you'd meet with other business owners around it in a conference room, and you would all have done this module, and then you'd discuss what you got out of it, how you've applied it, what the best ideas were. So I got into this because I knew I didn't want to be a quantity surveyor, but I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So this lady that was selling these things, she said to me, "Johno, do this program, and at least it might give you some sort of idea of what you want to do for the rest of your life." So I did the program, and it blew me away totally. It was just all about positive thinking, and I think as a quantity surveyor, I was very negative. So that I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be selling this to everybody else so they can have their enlightenment like I've had. And so I got into that, and we sold a lot of programs and had a lot of fun, made a lot of money.
So you were effectively a salesman, were you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you're proud of it by the looks of it.
Yeah, I won all the awards. We used to have these world conventions all over the place. I remember once flying to Hawaii, first class, all the way to Hawaii.
Yeah.
From little old Zimbabwe, and then first class all the way back from Hawaii back to Zimbabwe. Yeah, it was good fun, and the results were great. You know, people would do these programs, and they would become so much more positive. Everything in their lives would start happening the way it should. So, in a nutshell, you know, the way you think about life and all of that, Paul, you're always thinking of the opportunities, the positives that you're getting. You bring out the best of people, and that is exactly what this program did. It brought out the best of people within themselves. So it was like they had these modules, which was like a little Paul Waite talking to them every day.
What a scary thought.
On cassette tape.
Yeah. A little Paul Waite that wasn't drinking any alcohol or preaching nonsense. So
no, it's just don't feel sorry for yourself. Pull yourself up by your bootstrings and get yourself going. You know,
that's very you, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when did you actually take the plunge and leave the country, and why did you leave?
Well, funnily enough, so I was doing exceptionally well with this particular, it was like a franchise. It was a licensed product. And we were making a lot of money, but I could see a lot of farmers being killed. And you could just tell that Zimbabwe, it didn't take a lot of knowledge really to see that it was heading nosediving into becoming into the situation that it was in the country. And we had very small children at that stage. And the sort of conversation we were having is, when they put the gun to your head to steal your car, remember to unhook the kid from the back and get her out the car seat before you get out the car. And we had a suitcase packed with the passports in it and all that ready to run as soon as we had to. So then one day we went to a dinner party around, not very far, just a couple of miles away from where we were. And when we got there, everybody was like totally like they'd just seen a ghost or whatever, really ashen-faced. I said, what's going on? And the couple that had arrived before we had arrived at the gate had exactly that situation. They put the gun to their head and took the car. And so that was when I thought, right, I don't want to be having people breaking into my house, putting a gun to my head, raping my wife and stealing everything inside. I'm not prepared for that. I need to find a new place to go. So at that stage, I looked into who was running SMI here in the UK, and they said there's no one there. So I said, well, can I buy the master license? And 6 months later, we were here. Brilliant.
I think that's a good place to stop you there. So next we have Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, which was probably quite ironic, I guess. So why did you pick this?
Because this is a song for any time. This is Elton John at his best. This is, if you think about life and music and what makes great music, it's all about that life that courses through it. And this is all about life in general, isn't it? This will wake anyone up on a Monday morning.
Wakey, wakey.
This is Paul Waite on Aspen Waite Radio.
Rockin' party time in Aspen Waite Towers in Bridgewater. This is the Aspen Waite Radio Breakfast Show. This is Paul Waite, and I am joined by my big chum, Mr. Johno Bushman Harris. And Johno and his little tale, going in chronology from to the man he is today, he's just arrived in England. So where did you choose to live, or did you live?
We ended up moving. So I'd come here on a holiday probably a year or two earlier, and we had my wife comes from Oxfordshire, South Oxfordshire, and there's a little village there called Stadhampton, and I had there's a little restaurant there, hotel thing called the Crazy Bear. It's actually quite, I didn't realize it's quite famous now as a really place to go if you want a good weekend away. And so I was sitting in the Crazy Bear, and this guy was sitting across from me, and I had my cigarettes because we all used to smoke in those days, and I had my Madison cigarettes, which are Zimbabwean cigarettes, and this guy said, "Are those Madisons?" In a very British accent, and I said, "Yeah." He said, "I couldn't have one, could I?" I said, "Yeah, of course you can." It turned out he was the guy who owned the hotel. He owned that restaurant, and we ended up having a good old. He had come to work for his uncle on his uncle's tobacco farm about 10 or 15 years before then. So that's where we chose to live. I said to Ellie, if you can get us a house there, let's go and live there. So we did. We moved to Southampton, and I thought I've been able to sell these self-improvement programs in Zimbabwe. I must be able to go and teach the Poms a thing or two about self-improvement. And I came to the UK and ran straight into a brick wall. I didn't know anyone. Nobody wanted my product. It was quite an eye-opener.
What were your formative thoughts of living in the UK compared to what you were used to?
I loved it. I loved certain aspects of it. The thing that shocked me more than anything else was packaging. Now we're talking, I came here in 2000. I couldn't believe how everything was wrapped in plastic, and then it was wrapped in plastic again. It was individually wrapped, then group wrapped. And in Zimbabwe, we didn't have packaging, anything at all like that. Nothing. Everything was just the fruit, the food. It all just was exposed. It wasn't packaged at all. But I just loved British ale, the football culture. I loved it. I came here and I really, really enjoyed myself. The only thing that didn't work very well was the business side of it.
Do you think British people are very welcoming?
British people are very accepting. I wouldn't say welcoming. They're very accepting, and you've got your story, and in Britain you are one of millions upon millions upon millions of people, and you have to make it on your own. The competition is huge, and that was the big difference. In Zimbabwe or a place like that, you've got a small community of people. Everyone knows it, a bit like Wales, really. Everyone knows everyone. But in the south of England, people will accept you, but it's up to you to make it happen.
So how did you go from your brick wall into becoming a business growth manager?
Well, I persisted with trying to sell these programs, and I did all right. I sold a few. I ended up selling enough to survive on. But when we hit the recession in about 2009, 2010, people were not spending money on being self-motivated. They were trying to just keep their businesses afloat.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's when it became very, very, very tough. And I thought, I'm not even enjoying this anymore. The pressure on the sales side is too much. So we used to have our offices at one of the Oxford Innovation Centres that they run, the incubation centres, innovation centres. And I spotted an advert on LinkedIn for a growth manager with Oxford Innovation. And I thought, well, my CV is absolutely hopeless. I've never really worked for anyone except myself. So I spoke to the manageress at the centre, and I said, can you put in a good word for me with your HR people? Because I think I'd be brilliant at this position. And so she did. I went to an interview. There was 5 of us, I think, at the interview. The interview lasted half a day or something like that.
Really?
And I got the job, and I loved it. Did all right, did a good job with it.
So how many years had you been doing that before I met you?
About 3, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say my first impressions of you were, you were well-dressed, serious, professional guy who was good at, who did what it said on the tin. You had a personality. As I say, you're probably a much nicer person than the person I first thought you were.
Oh, that's very kind.
So maybe a little bit of a soft chocolate with a little bit of a hard outside, which doesn't take long to bash in. Do you actually remember our first meeting?
I remember a couple. I remember the meeting that we had at the Donington Valley. 2 meetings. One at the Donington Valley Golf Club when it was a big meeting. Aspen Waite were talking about the business growth service.
Yeah.
And then there was another meeting that we had at the Donington Valley Hotel shortly after that, where it was just like about 3 or 4 of us.
Okay, so I think we've got 10 minutes and 35 seconds. I think we'll, in our final 10 minutes, we'll do a bit of self-promotion, if that's all right, Johno. So we'll talk.
Sounds good to me.
We'll talk about how Johno became the heartbeat of Aspen Waite. And your final song today is not a song I'm familiar with. So what is The Git Up by Blanco Brown? What's that all about?
That is just, Blanco Brown is like an American cowboy, but he's a Black American cowboy. And his music is that American cowboy type music. You're going to love this.
Right.
Just picture yourself in a pair of American boots in a big square dance formation.
Aspen Waite Radio. Full weight.
I'm so glad you picked that, Johno, because it just sort of sums you up, really. So it just sort of sums up that character. So as we have 9 minutes and 40 seconds, just do a bit of a bridging for the listeners. I think my relationship with Johno and the journey would probably sum up the best of mankind, actually, and humanity, and perhaps, you know, what can happen when people decide to make life simple and do things like trust. So over the time I knew Johno, when he was still a manager at the Business Growth Service, we started doing some business together. So Johno would introduce R&D business in particular to Aspen Waite.
Yep.
And then, of course, the very painful day came. When was that? Can you remember? I think it was November or October.
It was November 2015.
Yeah.
Or was it 2014? I can't remember. But George Osborne said something in the autumn budget or something, and that was on the Tuesday. And then on the Friday, I think we all received an email saying, from what George Osborne said, that the service that we were providing is no longer going to be operational. You're all fired.
What was very interesting about that, and I don't know if Ross remembers this. This is a true story. So again, this is sort of a very good example of what happens if you dare to do something. So literally the day before Johno's Friday announcement, I held a strategy meeting in Donington Valley Golf Club.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one that I was at.
And announced the formation of the Complete Business Growth Service.
That's it.
And then one day later, the government closed theirs. And I can remember bringing me up and going, "You jammy bastard, Paul! Why does this always happen to you?" You know, and I, of course, at the time, I didn't really appreciate the significance of it. But obviously, you know, what it did in the short term is it made the community that you served had all their sweeties taken away from them, effectively.
Absolutely.
And of course, the closest sweetie they could get was an Aspen Waite R&D wrapper. So poor old Johno was left there. I hadn't actually spoken to you directly after you received your, you know, you are no longer going to be working for us. And I can remember phoning you up one day, and I appreciated that, because this is how I saw you at the time, that you were a person of principle. So I wasn't entirely confident that you would, you know, say what I wanted you to say. So I basically phoned Johno up. I don't know if you remember this, and I said, "Hello, Johno. Seems to me you might need a friend." And you said something like, "Yeah, I could do with a friend." So I said, "Well, I'm your friend. How about working for me?"
Yeah, it was very much along those lines.
And you went, "Well, that sounds all right." Something like that, didn't you? I don't know. It was actually no more complicated than that, was it?
Absolutely, yeah. No, it sounds good. We get on with each other. Let's do it.
And that's basically what happened. And I think you started in February, if I remember rightly.
Something like that, yeah.
So
that's right.
So Johno,
actually, I think I started even a month before I was quite finished with Oxford Innovation.
So, that being too self-promoting, what were your early views on Aspen Waite? What did you think we were different? What did you like about it?
Yeah, very different. Well, you were very different. I mean, I said my mum wanted me to go to university. She wanted me to become an accountant, and I just was not going to ever become an accountant. And you were the furthest thing from an accountant I'd met. And very charismatic, maverick, the sort of thing that it's all about, like we were talking earlier about good music is all about life. Business is all about life. It's people, isn't it? It's how much do you get on with people and how much fun are you going to have, really, I think is what it's all about. How much enjoyment. And I could see I was going to have a good time with you guys. So that's, and it was like that very much. It was, a very fast-growing company, wasn't it? R&D was just sort of in its infancy. Nobody was really doing R&D that I knew of.
Research and development tax credits we're talking about in particular here.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So again, sort of jumping through time. So Johno started off effectively as a business development manager for Aspen Waite. Patrolling around sort of Reading, Swindon, Oxford, etc., and became very soon, I would say, became quintessentially Aspen Waite, and probably undoubtedly you've helped to shape who we are. Certainly had a big influence on me. I see you and me as sort of almost like synonymous but different, and I've probably never met anybody in my life who is more prepared to accept something than you. So I'll tell a true story of this. I was sat in a meeting with Johno once in the Oxford area. You'll tell me where it was. It might have been Wantage, actually. And we were sat opposite our intellectual property friends. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And I had my pad in front of me, and I suddenly had this idea, which those of you who know me happens quite often. So I started scribbling down on my pad because I was getting brain dumping, and I'd come up with the idea of happy business. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that very clearly.
I drew this happy face and thing, and I turned round to Johno during the meeting, and I showed it at him, pointed at it, and he went,
"Yeah, that's it. That's what we're looking for."
I basically said to Johno, "Right, Johno, you're going to pioneer happy business." And most people would have sat there and gone, and you just went, "Okay." And of course, what you then did, without me having to do anything, you've totally embraced that. So if you look at Johno's email signatures, it's all about happy this and happy that,
Absolutely, it is. And if something fits with my values and the values of what it is that we're trying to achieve come together, I'll give everything to it. Just because if something fits with your values, you're going to enjoy doing it, aren't you? So I find working, especially at Aspen Waite, doing what we do, is very much fun. It's not work. I don't think on a Monday morning, oh God, from Monday to Friday now. I just think, oh, what a beautiful day. Let's go for it.
Yeah. So just jumping in. So I think one of the things I often say is that life is all about people, and a business is only as good as its people. And I think what's happened with you we had a period where you were a business development manager, and then I decided that Aspen Waite needed to have a practice, in Johno heartland. And it's a true story because I love Alfred the Great so much. I wanted it to be where Alfred the Great was born. So true story. Found a practice in Wantage, where there's only 2 statues of Alfred the Great in the country. The other one being in Winchester, of course. And met the owner, and I basically turned around to Johno and said, "You're going to run this," which, from a conventional accountant's point of view, was madness. I probably don't know anyone else in the world in my position who would have said, "I'm going to buy an accountancy practice and put this crazy Zimbabwean Jamaican in charge of it." But I just knew that you were going to be brilliant, and we grew the turnover we grew the turnover in the first year by 127% over its previous level, which was probably, I think, genuinely Aspen Waite's greatest factually recorded achievement in its history.
Pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you did, which is, I don't know if you ever think about this, is you Aspen Waiteized the whole office in days.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing achievement. It says an awful lot about you as a person.
Thanks. But
Well,
it's just been really good fun. It was a new challenge, and you know, the whole concept is happy business, and if you can make sure that you can provide your team with everything they need to enjoy themselves and to do the best job they can, you know, I think that's it. If you can do that, you're good.
So there we are. So I hope you enjoyed listening to the tale of Johno Harris today. We haven't really gotten to the bottom of this fine chap. Johno's got his share of problems at the moment, but as always, is facing them with immense courage. And it's an absolute pleasure and honor to know you, Johno. And thank you so much for enriching my life. And all of you listening today, we'll be back tomorrow. So it was the Aspen Waite Radio Breakfast Show, and we're off to the news.
Aspen Waite Radio.